The storm rolling across Huntington Bankfield wasn't just a weather incident. It felt like a warning. Snow spiraled sideways, piling in the corners of the field, sinking into the players' face masks, and swallowing sound until every movement looked like it was happening underwater. In that blizzard stood Shedeur Sanders, steam rising off his breath, shoulders squared, eyes sharp, watching as the game around him unraveled into something that didn't resemble football anymore. He had just delivered one of the most impressive rookie quarterback performances in Browns history. 364 passing yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, and a rushing score that showed he could take a hit, shake it off, and run straight into the teeth of a defense. He was the first Browns rookie to ever put up that combination of numbers, but those stats meant absolutely nothing as the scoreboard glared back at him. Cleveland was losing, not just losing, collapsing, and that's where the story turns dark, because the 31-29 final score barely scratches the surface of what happened out there. If you only looked at the numbers, you'd assume this was another tough, close game between two competitive teams. But when you peel back the layers, when you watch the tape, when you feel the energy in that stadium shift from confidence to confusion to disbelief, you realize something else was happening. Something that shouldn't happen to a team with playoff aspirations. Something that shouldn't happen to a franchise that promised fans a new era when they drafted Sanders. The Titans weren't supposed to be a threat. They came into this matchup as one of the worst teams in the NFL, 1-11, statistically broken, mentally defeated, and already firing their head coach mid-season. Meanwhile, Cleveland had a top-2 defense, an MVP-level pass rusher in Myles Garrett, and a rookie quarterback playing beyond expectations. This should have been a blowout. This should have been the game where Shedeur padded his stats, the defense feasted, and the Browns cruised to an easy win. Instead, something strange took place in that snow. Defenders slipped. Tackles were missed by yards. Assignments broke down with no clear explanation. And the Titans, a team that had struggled to move the ball all year, suddenly looked unstoppable. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay locked in on all the latest NFL drama, make sure you hit that like button. It helps the video reach more people who love this content just like you. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another update, reaction, or storyline as it unfolds in real time. I also want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think about Shedeur Sanders' performance and the Browns' collapse? Drop your thoughts below and let's talk about it. And don't forget to share this video with friends who follow the NFL. Your support truly keeps the channel moving forward. As Shedeur stood on the sideline, hands on his hips, studying the field with that calm frustration you only see in quarterbacks who know they've done everything they could, the crowd around him started to sense it too. The problem wasn't him. The problem was everything happening around him. And for the first time, fans and analysts alike began whispering the same question. How does a performance this good still turn into a loss this bad? The snow kept falling, but what really froze that stadium was the realization that this wasn't just a bad day. It was a sign of something deeper. Before the game even kicked off, every logical sign pointed toward a Cleveland victory. Tennessee wasn't just having a rough year, they were historically ineffective. A 1-11 record doesn't happen by accident. Their offense ranked dead last in multiple categories. Their rookie quarterback, Cam Ward, had flashes of potential but spent most of the season buried under pressure, inconsistent in his reads, and struggling to move the ball. Their head coach had already been fired, an admission by ownership that the season was over. This was a team in disarray, patched together with rookies, mid-season signings, and desperation. And on the other side stood Cleveland's defense, second in the entire NFL, a group built on physical dominance, anchored by Myles Garrett, who was chasing history with 19 sacks and just a few games left to break the all-time single-season record. This Browns defense wasn't merely good, they were feared. They embarrassed experienced quarterbacks. They shut down elite running backs. They forced turnovers like clockwork. If there was ever a moment for them to feast, this was it. That's why what happened next made absolutely no sense. On the opening drive, Tennessee's first opportunity of the game, their offense suddenly came alive like they had been waiting all year for this exact matchup. They marched down the field with ease, slicing through Cleveland's secondary like it was made of mist. Cam Ward, who had been struggling for months, suddenly looked confident, calm, and sharp. He found his rhythm, made precise throws, and capped the drive with a touchdown to Alicom, Tennessee's first opening drive TD of the entire season. Fans blinked, commentators blinked, even the Titans' sideline looked surprised. This wasn't supposed to happen, not against the Browns, not in the snow, not in a stadium where defenses typically swallow defenses whole. But before Cleveland had time to regroup, the situation escalated. On Tennessee's next possession, Tony Pard took a handoff that should have gone for maybe a few yards. Instead, Browns defenders slipped, collided, or simply missed him entirely. Pard sprinted 65 yards untouched, the longest rushing score Tennessee had produced all year. It looked bizarre, uncharacteristic, almost surreal. And that's when the first whispers started. Analysts noted how unusual it was. Fans online questioned whether Cleveland's defense was exhausted, unprepared, or simply unfocused. But the more the game continued, the more clear it became that this wasn't just a slow start. This was the beginning of a collapse that defied logic. And the biggest mystery wasn't how the Titans suddenly found success. It was how the Browns, one of the best defensive units in the league, suddenly looked like they had never played together before. But the strangest part, the real collapse was still yet to come. What happened next is the kind of sequence that leaves analysts silent, fans stunned, and defensive coordinators staring at the ground with the expression of someone who just witnessed something they can't explain. Because after Tony Pard's 65-yard untouched sprint, people assumed it was a fluke, a random breakdown, maybe a slip in the snow, maybe a communication issue. One mistake can be forgiven. One weird play happens in the NFL, but what unfolded afterward was different. It wasn't one bad moment. It was an unraveling. Play after play, the Browns' defense, the unit that had been the pride of the franchise, the reason pundits believed the team could make a playoff push, suddenly looked lost. Defenders weren't just missing tackles, they were falling to the ground with no contact. They took angles that made no sense. They hesitated at moments when instinct should have taken over. The snow played a role, sure, but snow doesn't erase fundamentals. Snow doesn't make multiple defenders misjudge a running back's speed by yards. Snow doesn't create a complete collapse of discipline. And the crazy part? All of it was captured on video. Multiple angles, slow-motion replays, social media clips that fans immediately started analyzing frame by frame. Some clips looked almost comedic, Browns defenders tripping over their own teammates, slipping in ways that didn't align with the flow of the play, or reacting a full second late to Pard's cuts. You could feel the confusion spread through the stadium like a cold draft. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders stood on the sideline watching all of this unfold without even touching the ball. He was still waiting for his chance to get going, waiting for his offense to hit the field with any rhythm. But before he could, the scoreboard already read 14-0. Not because he made mistakes, not because the offense failed, but because the unit that was supposed to be carrying this team cracked wide open in front of everyone. To make matters worse, the Titans didn't even have to do anything flashy. They weren't running exotic formations. They weren't unloading trick plays. They were executing basic football handoffs, short passes, conventional motion, and Cleveland's defense responded like they had never seen any of it before. This wasn't a crack in the dam. This was the dam exploding. Fans online started buzzing with theories. Was it the weather? Was the team unprepared? Was the locker room fractured? No one had answers, and through all the confusion, one thing kept becoming clearer. Shedeur wasn't being outplayed. He wasn't struggling. He wasn't the problem. The collapse was happening somewhere else, somewhere deeper. And as wild as the start of this game was, the next sequence, Shedeur's explosive response, would make the meltdown even harder to understand. From the moment Shedeur Sanders jogged onto the field, there was a different energy, sharp, locked in, unbothered by the noise swirling around him all week. Analysts questioned his toughness. Opposing fans mocked his poise. Even some inside his own locker room wondered if he could carry the weight of a franchise already wobbling under expectations. But as the first half unfolded, every doubt evaporated. This wasn't just a good showing. It was a clinic, a masterclass that reminded the entire football world why Shedeur's name keeps rising in draft conversations. The opening drive set the tone. 4 plays, 68 yards. All orchestrated with the kind of precision that makes defensive coordinators age in real time. Shedeur controlled the tempo, switching plays at the line, reading the coverage not just correctly, but confidently. On a 2nd and long, he recognized the defense rotating late into a disguised Tampa 2. Without hesitation, he checked into a seam beater, hitting his tight end in stride between the collapsing linebackers. That single throw, perfect velocity, perfect placement, was a warning shot. He had arrived locked in and fully dialed. But it wasn't just the throws, it was the command. Every time he stepped to the line, he was conducting the offense like a seasoned veteran, pointing out blitzers, shifting protections, and manipulating the safeties with his eyes. Twice in the first quarter, he looked off an entire coverage shell simply by staring down the boundary before whipping the ball back to the middle. These are the traits coaches beg for. These are the traits you can't teach. Then came the drive that broke the defense's confidence. Early in the second quarter, facing pressure on nearly every snap, Shedeur strung together a sequence of plays that felt ripped straight out of a highlight reel. On 3rd and 11, he sidestepped a collapsing pocket, reset his base mid-rollout, and delivered a laser down the sideline, to a spot only his receiver could reach. It wasn't just accurate, it was anticipatory. It showed a quarterback who throws to windows before they open, because he already knows where the defense is going to be. Moments later, he capped the drive with a touchdown that will live on film study queued-ups for months. The defense brought a double A-gap pressure, a look meant to force the ball out instantly. Instead, Shedeur drifted subtly, buying a half-second, just enough to hit his hot route on a pivot concept. Touchdown, perfect read, perfect patience, perfect execution. What made the performance even more impressive was the adversity swirling around him. Miscommunications in the huddle, missed blocks, a run game that never really established itself. And yet Shedeur absorbed all of it, refusing to show frustration. Great quarterbacks don't just elevate themselves, they calm the chaos around them. That's exactly what he did. By halftime, the numbers were elite: high completion rate, multiple explosive plays, and flawless decision-making. But the numbers didn't tell the full story. This was a statement, a declaration, a message to every critic, every rival, every scout watching. The second half began with a feeling that the momentum might carry forward, that Shedeur's masterclass would evolve into a complete game masterpiece. But football has a cruel habit of flipping narratives in real time, and within minutes, the energy shifted. What started as a controlled, surgical performance slowly unraveled into a spiral that left fans stunned, coaches frustrated, and analysts grasping for explanations. It began innocently enough: a dropped pass on 1st down, a blown blocking assignment on 2nd, and a hurried throw on 3rd that sailed just a touch too far. Small mistakes, individually harmless, but together they created the first cracks in a structure that had looked unshakable through 2 quarters. The defense, smelling blood, tightened its coverages and ramped up the pressure. Suddenly, the clean pockets of the first half became chaotic battlefields. Shedeur, who had been the calm eye of the storm earlier, now found himself dodging defenders before his receivers even completed their routes. The frustration was visible. His footwork grew rushed, his release quicker. Drives that had flowed smoothly earlier turned stagnant, stalling before they could even begin. On one second-half possession, Shedeur was sacked twice in 3 plays, both times due to free rushers bursting through the interior. The sideline shots told the story. He wasn't angry, but he was absorbing the weight of a game slipping out of his hands. The turning point came midway through the 3rd quarter. Facing a manageable 2nd and 6, Shedeur attempted to throw a quick slant. The timing was perfect, the read was correct, but the receiver rounded the route instead of cutting sharply. The ball hit a defender's chest like it was gift-wrapped. Interception. The stadium erupted, the momentum swung violently, and for the first time all afternoon, doubt crept into Shedeur's expression. From that moment on, the spiral accelerated. The offensive line played as if they were stuck in quicksand, reacting late to stunts and failing to communicate on blitz pickups. A simple 4-man rush began collapsing the pocket in under 3 seconds. Shedeur was forced to play backyard football, spinning, scrambling, improvising, just to survive the down. That's when the mechanical slippage began. Throws came off platform. Timing was disrupted. Precision turned into desperation. What made the collapse even more jarring was how preventable much of it was. Missed assignments, mental lapses, poor adjustments. The coaching staff appeared slow to counter the defensive pressure, continuing to call longer developing routes instead of quick hitters to help Shedeur reset the rhythm he desperately needed. Instead of simplifying the game, they complicated it. Instead of stabilizing him, they left him exposed. Yet even as the spiral worsened, Shedeur continued fighting. He absorbed hits that would have rattled lesser quarterbacks. He kept taking chances downfield, trying to will his team back into it. But the support wasn't there. A critical third down pass hit a receiver's hands and fell incomplete. On another drive, a deep shot was placed perfectly, but the receiver was out of position, turning the play into another missed opportunity. By the time the fourth quarter arrived, the first half brilliance felt like a distant memory. The game had shifted from Shedeur's showcase to a cruel reminder of how quickly football can humble even its brightest talents. The spiral wasn't about Shedeur failing, it was about everything around him collapsing at once. He didn't lose composure, the team lost control. If the second half exposed fractures in the offense, what followed next was a full-blown organizational meltdown. The Cleveland Browns didn't just struggle, they self-destructed, unraveling in real time as if every unresolved issue, every simmering tension, every unacknowledged weakness decided to erupt all at once. What should have been a competitive fight quickly morphed into a showcase of dysfunction, the kind of collapse that feels bigger than a single game. It started with the small things, the kind of moments viewers almost miss unless they're paying close attention. Missed substitutions, confusion on the sideline, players running on late, others jogging off slowly, unsure of their assignments. A defensive coach shouting across the headset with visible frustration. These were symptoms of a deeper problem. Cleveland wasn't just losing control of the game, they were losing control of themselves. The defense, which had played inspired football in the first half, began fracturing. Players pointed fingers after blown coverages. Safeties barked at linebackers for late rotations. Corners threw their hands up after miscommunications. The unity that had once defined the unit was replaced with visible discontent. On one sequence, after giving up a chunk play on third down, 2 defenders had to be separated before tempers escalated further. It wasn't about the play. It was about the pressure, frustration, and exhaustion piling up on a team no longer functioning as a cohesive whole. Offensively, things were even worse. The offensive line, already overwhelmed, looked defeated. Linemen stopped communicating. Missed assignments became routine. Body language turned negative. Hands on hips, heads shaking, glances filled with resignation. A team that once fought through adversity now looked like it was waiting for the game to end. The coaching staff didn't help. Instead of adjusting to the chaos, they added to it. Play calls arrived late, forcing Shedeur to snap the ball with mere seconds left on the clock. Mismatched personnel groupings appeared in critical moments. Confusion reigned. On one disastrous drive, a miscommunication between the sideline and the huddle led to a wasted timeout, right after the team had already burned another due to substitution errors. Broadcasters began questioning the sideline management. Fans booed. Commentators used phrases like organizational breakdown and lack of identity, words you never want associated with an NFL franchise. But the most glaring sign of Cleveland's implosion was emotional. Players argued. Coaches gestured wildly. Veterans shook their heads in disbelief. The team, once built on grit, discipline, and resilience, looked like a group of talented individuals playing separate games. When adversity struck, instead of rallying, they fractured. Even special teams weren't spared. A botched return, an unnecessary roughness penalty, and a misaligned field goal unit symbolized the larger collapse. Every phase of the team was breaking down at the same time. That's not coincidence, that's culture cracking under pressure. And through it all, Shedeur was caught in the crossfire, trying to execute plays behind an unraveling offensive line, trying to stay composed as the sideline descended into chaos. He wasn't rattled, he was abandoned. Cleveland didn't just lose structure. They lost composure, discipline, and identity. The second-half spiral wasn't a fluke. It was the inevitable result of cracks ignored for too long. Just when it looked like Cleveland had completely collapsed, Shedeur Sanders tried to drag the franchise back from the edge. With the crowd restless, the sideline tense, and the scoreboard mocking them, he stepped onto the field with a calm that didn't match the chaos around him. It wasn't arrogance, it was belief. For a moment, it felt like the storm was about to shift. And it actually started shifting. Shedeur opened the drive with a strike over the middle, threading a pass between two defenders as if he'd been waiting for that moment all game. Then came a perfectly placed sideline dart, thrown before the receiver had even made his break. Momentum returned. The stadium, silent minutes earlier, suddenly roared back to life. Even the commentators, who'd spent the last quarter dissecting Cleveland's meltdown, began whispering about the possibility of a miracle. But as the energy rose, so did the tension. On a crucial play, Shedeur changed the protection at the line, a smart adjustment, one that veteran quarterbacks make routinely. But something went wrong. One lineman looked confused. Another stared toward the sideline, waiting for guidance that wasn't coming. When the ball was snapped, the pocket collapsed instantly, as if the protection call had never been communicated. Shedeur escaped, scrambling to his right and tossing a first-down laser that kept the drive alive. Still, something looked off. Rumors later suggested that not everyone on the line was on the same page. Some fans speculated miscommunication. Others whispered about frustration boiling over. And a few, especially online, suggested harsher theories, that certain players had mentally checked out or grown resentful during the unraveling. Nothing was proven, but the whispers only grew louder after what happened next. With Cleveland now inching toward the red zone and hope returning, Shedeur stepped up to the line for the biggest snap of the night. The defense crowded the box, expecting pressure. Shedeur saw it. He adjusted. He called out a shift. Receivers moved. But the line, they didn't. At the snap, two defenders came free, completely untouched. Not a chip, not a hand, not even a glance in their direction. It was the kind of breakdown that doesn't happen in professional football unless something has gone terribly wrong. Shedeur took the hit, the ball bounced loose, and the defense jumped on it. The stadium gasped. The momentum died instantly, like someone had cut the power switch. Replay angles made the moment even stranger. Some linemen barely moved. Others reacted late, and online discussions exploded with theories. Some fans blamed fatigue, others pointed to sideline dysfunction, and some took it further, suggesting internal conflict or lingering frustration toward the rookie quarterback. Again, nothing confirmed. But the timing, the body language, and the complete collapse on such a critical play only fueled speculation. What mattered most was this. Shedeur's miracle comeback attempt had been derailed in the most bizarre, unfortunate moment of the season. And the fallout from that play, that would ripple far beyond the final whistle. The moment the final whistle blew, the conversation around the Browns shifted from disappointment to something far more unsettling. Normally, after a loss, especially a close, dramatic one, fans argue about play calling, missed opportunities, or officiating. But this time, the tone felt different. There was confusion, anger, suspicion. Cleveland didn't just lose. They unraveled in ways that didn't match the talent on the field. And within minutes, the darkest corners of the fan base began stitching together a narrative that would explode across social media before midnight. The turning point was that final offensive sequence, where Shedeur Sanders stood poised to complete one of the most improbable comebacks of the season, only for the protection to break down in a way that looked, to many fans, unnatural. Two defenders came free. The line barely moved. The miscommunication was so catastrophic, so bizarre, that it didn't take long for speculation to ignite. Was it incompetence, miscommunication, fatigue, or something more deliberate? Inside Cleveland talk shows, the word sabotage was floated for the first time. Not as an accusation, not as a certainty, but as a question, one that no one in the organization seemed prepared to answer. Some of the theories were predictable. A portion of the fan base pointed to the Deshaun Watson contract, still one of the most controversial in NFL history. They claimed that the front office had every financial incentive to keep their expensive quarterback as the face of the franchise, and Shedeur outperforming him threatened the foundational structure of the organization. Was it possible, fans asked, that certain decisions, certain play calls, certain personnel rotations, were being influenced by the desire to protect past investments? Others blamed coaching dysfunction. Kevin Stefanski's job security had been in doubt for weeks, and critics argued that inconsistent play calling, confused sideline communication, and questionable personnel decisions weren't accidents. They were symptoms of a staff that had lost control of the locker room. When players no longer trust leadership, they don't always quit loudly. Sometimes they quit quietly, subtly, in ways invisible to the box score but glaring on film. But the darkest theory came from insiders whispering about fractures between veterans and the rookie quarterback. Was Shedeur's rising stardom threatening egos in the locker room? Was resentment brewing as analysts and fans heaped praise onto a fifth-round pick while the team spiraled? Social media sleuths pointed to body language on the sideline. Certain interactions. Heated exchanges caught on camera. Nothing confirmed, nothing concrete, but enough to feed the growing firestorm. And as these rumors swirled, Shedeur Sanders became a symbol of something bigger than football. To some fans, he represented hope, the one thing the Browns had never managed to preserve. To others, he was a reminder of the organization's long history of dysfunction. The fact that a rookie could throw for 364 yards, 3 touchdowns, and orchestrate multiple late-game drives, and still lose, didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like Cleveland's curse had evolved. Whether any of the speculation was grounded in truth didn't matter. What mattered was perception. And right now, the perception was this. Something inside the Browns was broken far beyond one snowy afternoon. To understand what happened on that frozen afternoon, you have to zoom out, way out. Because the collapse against Tennessee wasn't an isolated failure, and it wasn't just a bad game. It was a symptom of something much deeper, something that has been festering in Cleveland for years. An organization that cannot decide what it wants to be, who it wants to trust, or what direction it is actually heading. And in that void, chaos always wins. The Browns have spent decades caught between identities. Every time a quarterback shows promise, the franchise shifts course, changes regimes, rewrites the playbook, reshuffles the locker room. Shedeur Sanders was supposed to break that cycle, or at least interrupt it. A tough, poised, unshakable rookie who brought energy to a team desperate for stability. But instead of clarity, his rise has exposed the fractures hiding beneath the surface. Start with the front office. Half the organization is still tethered to the Deshaun Watson contract, a financial decision so massive that it warped not just the roster, but the team's long-term strategy. The other half sees what Shedeur is becoming, a rising star developing faster than anyone expected. That internal tug-of-war shapes everything from personnel decisions to game day strategy. You can feel it in the tension between the coaching staff and the executives. You can hear it in the carefully phrased press conferences. You can see it on the field when the quarterback rotation, play calling, and offensive identity seem to contradict each other week after week. Then there's the locker room, where the divide is more subtle but potentially more dangerous. Veterans who have weathered losing seasons don't always respond well when a rookie suddenly becomes the center of attention, especially one who brings cameras, headlines, and the primetime spotlight with him. Shedeur didn't ask for it, but he can't avoid it. And every touchdown he throws only intensifies the comparisons to the franchise's past failures. Some players embrace the new energy, others resist it. You can't measure it on a stat sheet, but anyone who's been inside an NFL building knows how quickly quiet resentment can turn into fractured chemistry. And above it all, there's the weight of history. The Browns aren't just another team, they're a team defined by trauma, close losses, bad breaks, stars leaving, prospects failing, coaches cycling in and out like a revolving door. That kind of legacy doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of the organization's DNA. Even when talent arrives, even when someone like Shedeur shows signs of breaking the pattern, the franchise almost instinctively pulls itself back into chaos, like muscle memory built over decades. That's why this loss wasn't just heartbreaking, it was revealing. Because in that game, you didn't just see blown assignments. You saw confusion. You saw disconnection. You saw a team not united behind one identity, one vision, or one quarterback. A franchise at war with itself cannot win, not consistently, and certainly not in the moments that matter most. And the brutal truth is this. Shedeur Sanders isn't fighting opponents. He's fighting history. He's fighting dysfunction. He's fighting the organization he was drafted to save. Shedeur Sanders walked off that frozen field with snow on his shoulders and frustration in his eyes. But beneath all of that was something even heavier. A crossroads. Every rookie quarterback hits one at some point. A moment where they either become who they're meant to be or get swallowed by the dysfunction around them. For Shedeur, that moment might have just arrived. Because the way this season ends will shape not only his trajectory, but the identity of the Browns franchise for years to come. On paper, Shedeur has already done more than most first-year quarterbacks ever manage. He's shown poise in chaos, accuracy under pressure, and a mental toughness that veterans spend years trying to build. He's carried a broken offense, compensated for an inconsistent line, and elevated receivers who have struggled all season. That kind of resilience is rare. It's the kind of trait NFL teams build around. But the problem is simple. Cleveland hasn't decided whether they want to build around him at all. The Watson contract looms like a storm cloud. As long as it sits on the books, Shedeur is fighting not just for wins, but for political territory inside his own building. Rumors have already started circulating, whispers that the front office is torn between doubling down on their expensive mistake or embracing the rookie who has already outperformed expectations. These aren't just media narratives. They shape locker room confidence, coaching decisions, and even the playbook. And that uncertainty affects Shedeur's development. Every young quarterback needs stability, consistent coaching, a clear scheme, a front office that invests in the right pieces. Right now, Shedeur has none of that. One week, the offense leans into his strengths. The next, they call plays that look like they were designed for someone else entirely. The inconsistency doesn't reflect his talent. It reflects an organization still stuck between two timelines. One built around potential. The other built around contracts. So what happens next? If the Browns choose Shedeur, truly choose him, they can build something real. Surround him with a functional line, commit to his style of play, and let him grow without the constant shadow of internal conflict. The ceiling is high. Maybe higher than anything Cleveland has had at quarterback in decades. There's a version of the future where Shedeur becomes the leader who finally drags this team out of its endless cycle of collapse. But if the franchise keeps wavering, Shedeur might end up on the same path as quarterbacks before him, talented, determined, and ultimately consumed by the instability around him. Not because he isn't good enough, but because the Browns have never learned how to protect their future. And that's what makes this moment so defining. Shedeur has shown he's ready. The question is whether Cleveland is. Everything from here on, coaching decisions, roster moves, front office choices, will either lock him in as the face of the franchise or push him toward a future where he thrives somewhere else. Because Shedeur Sanders can become a star. The only uncertainty left is whether he'll become one in Cleveland or despite Cleveland.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.